Tonight, 2 people are found dead at a Scarborough apartment building in what police say is a possible murder-suicide.
Both deceased have sustained some significant trauma here.
The bodies were found around 2 o'clock this afternoon at Birchmount and St. Clair. Plus,
she was funny, she was loving.
A woman dies after trying to climb inside a clothing donation bin. The mayor calling for a safety review. And stolen, damaged Presto cards are causing financial headaches for some transit users. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. A Toronto police investigation on Birchmount, a block south of St. Clair East, continues tonight. That's after 2 bodies were found at an apartment complex, and detectives are trying to piece together what happened after a woman was found dead inside a unit and a man on the ground in the parking lot. Let's go live now to our Adrian Chung, who is outside 544 Birchmount Road. So, Adrian, what do we know about these deaths?
Well, Mike, even though the bodies were found hours ago, detectives have been fairly scant with details. But here's what we do know at this point, that multiple witnesses called police around 2:15 p.m. The official call was for unknown trouble, but when police arrived, they found 2 bodies, one of a woman at an 8th floor apartment unit, the second that of a man on the pavement outside in the parking lot. Now, police won't confirm if the man and woman know each other, wouldn't speculate whether or not that this was in fact a domestic incident. They also haven't confirmed how one body ended up outside of the building, but they did suggest that there was a good deal of violence leading up to both of their deaths. Have a listen.
Does it look like foul play may have been involved with at least one of the deaths?
Well, I mean, both deceased have sustained some significant trauma here, and again, how that has come in, how they've sustained their injuries, again, is something that we're trying to ascertain at this point.
Now, police say that they are not looking for suspects at this point. It's also worth noting that this is the 3rd death in as many days in southwest Scarborough. This weekend, a 36-year-old man was stabbed to death.
Okay. We just lost Adrian's audio. That was Adrian Chung reporting live for us in the Scarborough area tonight. We are learning more about a woman who was killed attempting to get into a clothing donation bin overnight. That happened in the Bloor and Dovercourt area. Friends say the victim was homeless and was often seen at a nearby drop-in center. As Ali Chasson tells us, many say those donation bins are dangerous and they're calling for changes.
I can only imagine it was not an easy death.
Crystal was homeless and believed to be about 34 years old. She was a regular face at Sistering, a drop-in shelter just around the corner.
When I heard this morning when I was at home and I heard that someone had died, I hoped and hoped and hoped it wasn't one of our women, but given the location, I assumed it was.
I said to her, I bet it's someone from Sistering, because it's just around the corner. Yeah. So, oh my God, oh my dear Lord. I'm like, how does somebody die from that? How? You know?
Her friends say she was getting clothes for herself when she got stuck. It has to do with the closing mechanism. Let's say you're putting a bag of clothes in the bin. You open the slot and place the items in the tray. There's a piece of metal that's supposed to prevent someone from sticking an arm in. But people have their methods.
She was to go in a donation box and she was to prop the door open so she wouldn't get stuck in it.
The slot is about 2 meters off the ground. If the person's weight shifts, the tray rotates in such a way that can crush them. Crystal is the 8th person in Canada to die like this.
Is this the best way to collect clothing?
Today, Mayor John Tory called for a review of this style of donation box.
I think it is extremely important in light of what's happened now that we should examine the safety implications of these boxes.
Late last month, a 34-year-old man died in a West Vancouver donation bin, all of which have been removed. Last November, a 32-year-old man was found dead inside a bin in Cambridge, Ontario. While Toronto mulls over what to do about what some advocates have called death traps, shelters are warning service users
not to go into those bins and reminding them that they can get whatever supplies they need, from clothing to toiletries to hygiene products. We have all of that here.
Crystal's friends will remember her spirit.
She was a very bubbly person. Like, I loved her. I still love her, even though she's not here anymore.
There are 460 other bins just like this one across the city right now. We did hear from one major manufacturer today saying in light of recent deaths, they will be redesigning theirs. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
We have another pedestrian accident to tell you about tonight. This one in the East York area, where a woman was taken to hospital after she was struck by a van. The woman is in life-threatening condition. This happened near St. Clair East and O'Connor Drive around 6:30. The woman suffered serious injuries to her leg. The driver remained at the scene. A portion of O'Connor was closed for several hours while police investigated. And a man is in custody tonight after driving his Toyota Yaris through the front window of a downtown Porsche dealership last night. At least 3 vehicles inside were damaged, and the driver wrote his ex-girlfriend's name on one of them. Police believe the incident was because of a recent breakup. The driver also spun his tires after crashing, causing smoke to fill the showroom. Police told staff at the dealership that the man did this on purpose and wanted to be arrested. He certainly got his wish. The president of the Oshawa Auto Workers Union says General Motors has rejected his proposals to keep the Oshawa plant open past 2019. Jerry Dias met with GM executives today in Detroit. Speaking to reporters in Windsor following the meeting, Dias was visibly frustrated.
So this is about greed, it's about corporate greed, and it's about a lack of an acknowledgement about the role of not only Canadian workers, by the way, but our American counterparts, of the success that General Motors is enjoying today.
GM workers staged a sit-down protest at the Oshawa plant today to express their disappointment. The automaker says the options suggested by the union would have meant substantial cost increases and hurt the company's competitive position. The union had proposed several options to extend production at the plant, including extending the life of vehicles currently produced there and shifting production plan for Mexico to Oshawa. GM says it has instead asked Unifor to work with the company on transition support for the close to 3,000 Oshawa workers who will lose their jobs when the plant shuts down. Colette Kennedy's here with a first look at the forecast tonight. Didn't feel like January today, but boy, is that going to change.
Oh, yes. That is definitely going to be changing. But you're right. Yeah, really mild out there. We had some readings in southern Ontario up there, above 8 degrees, in fact. So some really mild readings, and that's why we mostly had showers. And that changeover has been occurring. So we've been seeing some of those showers kind of mixing in with some wet flurries. And, of course, a little bit further towards the north and into the snow belt, it is some light snow to even getting into, as the winds pick up, seeing some of the squalls coming in. So there are areas there which could see 5, 8, maybe even 10 centimeters, but it's just scattered flurries that we have back here into the GTA that we're looking at through the overnight, and tomorrow morning that risk, and even tomorrow afternoon some scattered flurries. In fact, an enhanced chance into the afternoon after the lunch hour than we'll see earlier in the day. So we could have some wet roadways, again, having an impact on the commute. The temperature will be falling as those winds are changing. 0 overnight as it's coming down. Still a few areas getting a bit of a mix. And then those winds gusting to 50, maybe even 60 kilometers an hour. -1 tomorrow afternoon. And really tomorrow's the transition day, Mike. After that, much colder Arctic air is really going to be moving in. And I'll show you what those temperatures look like, whether you want to see it or not, when I come back.
I'll close my eyes. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Well, look at this rarity caught in the wild. Your eyes aren't deceiving you. This is a sighting of the extremely hard to find Eglinton Crosstown vehicle, the first one produced by Bombardier to arrive here in Toronto. It was delivered to the Crosstown hub at Mount Dennis, Black Creek this afternoon. Last week, we told you how Bombardier had 1 month to deliver the first 6 light rail vehicles. Metrolink says it doesn't have a timeline for when the rest of the order will be delivered. And staying with Metrolinx, we're hearing tonight for some transit riders concerned with how it handles lost or damaged Presto cards. If you report a lost or stolen credit card, the banks immediately will cancel it. Turns out that's not the case with a Presto card. Lorenda Redekop explains.
I had $90 on it, but when I looked again, it was like at $65, so I was a little bit worried.
Heather Dixon takes the GO train between Burlington and Toronto for work. On the way home yesterday, she noticed her Presto card was missing. She reported it lost, then checked her account.
So I checked my balance online and saw that somebody had found the card and was using it. Somebody took the bus in Burlington here, and then they got back on the GO train station, and then they went to Mississauga. And then that's when I started to get a little nervous that they were going to be using it again today.
That's because she noticed that on the Presto website, it says users are on the hook for all charges up to 24 hours after they report their card lost or stolen.
If you lose your card, you're sort of out of luck, which is surprising to me. It's just really surprising in 2019 that is the answer.
It isn't a perfect system by any means, but it certainly is better than losing all of your funds, because that's what would happen if your card wasn't registered.
And Dixon's not the only one who's fed up with Presto. Adam Rathwell's old card had a small crack and just stopped working. He has this new card now, but because he immediately registered it, he couldn't transfer his money.
This is a consumer technology, like, Tim's cards or Starbucks cards. It seems like something that could be easily solved online. It seems like they're adding an extra process that doesn't need to be there. I don't understand why I couldn't transfer my balance from one card to my other card.
He followed the Presto website and was able to transfer the money onto a third Presto card. In Dixon's case, $21 was spent on her card. After getting no help from customer service, she complained on Twitter. Now, Presto has agreed to refund all her money. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Burlington.
I like that it is Indigenous women and it respects that I'm Indigenous, so they actually know, like, okay, maybe if you're stressed out or something, you need to cleanse, and we'll smudge and stuff. I respect it.
Well, they have a higher infant mortality rate, and their child apprehension rate is 12 times higher than the rest of the population. But a new program at St. Mike's Hospital is trying to change that for Indigenous communities. We'll take you there a little later in our newscast. More than 4 years after her father took his own life, a Peterborough woman says not enough is being done to address the mental health of Ontario police officers. Richard Rogers was a Toronto police officer. He died back in July of 2014. As Farah Morali tells us, his daughter now hopes a coroner's review into police officer suicides will provide some answers.
So it's been about 4.5 years since we lost my dad.
Definitely happier times.
Lorianne Rogers remembers her father as a lover of animals. She says his downward spiral mentally began in 1994 when the Toronto police officer was first on scene at a car accident that killed his colleague.
He was doing sort of CPR on his friend, and that was sort of the first incidents where we really saw him impacted by the work that he was doing. He also went to medical advisory services within his own Toronto Police Service, trying to get help, begging emails towards the end for some sort of assistance.
Rogers and her mother say he never got that. He killed himself just months before his 25-year anniversary with the force.
I'd reached out to anyone I could think of to say, I don't understand why this had to happen, why this had to end this way. This doesn't make any sense to me. We had been told, they sort of cursorily, I think, looked into some things, but predominantly the answer that we got was there's nothing that could have been done. And I guess, quite frankly, I don't accept that.
Last week, Ontario's chief coroner announced it's conducting a review into police officer suicides in 2018. It's news that gives Rogers cautious optimism.
I think those families probably deserve some answers. I know we felt like we were owed some answers. But I also think that the question isn't why was 2018 a particularly bad year? I think the question is why in 2018 is this still happening?
Rogers' father's death won't be part of the review into police suicides because of how much has changed since 2014.
What I look at, though, from a general point of view and talking about deaths that have occurred before, again, sadness and condolences to those, but also hope that the broader look that we're taking in a systematic way will address many of the issues that they felt occurred in the loss of their loved one.
Toronto's police chief and his deputy were not available for an interview on this issue of officers' mental health and what, if anything, has changed. It did say in a statement that over the years it has increased its wellness services, and that includes access to psychologists and a critical response team. It added it will review any recommendations that might come from the coroner.
For now, that's all Rogers can hope for, that others won't come up against the same barriers her father did.
When they need help, we should be there to help them.
Farah Morelli, CBC News, Toronto.
That's a live shot of the CN Tower for you. The temperature's dropping overnight, and you don't want to know how low the mercury will fall by the end of the week. Colette is back with the answer after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Colette's back with our extended forecast, and you can't say you didn't warn us. There are colder temperatures ahead.
Much colder temperatures moving in, Mike, that's right. We kind of have to reconnect ourselves with the fact that it's January. It was hard to feel that way today with the mild temperatures, but just having a little bit of a look at where our seasonal temperatures are for this time of year. So about -2 for a high and -10 for an overnight low. And keep that one in your head, because we're going to look at the 5-day forecast and we're going to be seeing our lows going back to seasonal and even a bit on the cool side. So in the meantime, what we have to deal with as this system is moving through is the temperatures kind of falling not only through the overnight tonight, but they'll be kind of steady or even coming down a little bit into tomorrow afternoon. For the GTA, it's mostly seeing this mix turning over to just these scattered flurries like we've been getting here into the last few hours, and that changeover continues. Now, back to the northwest of us, we could see in the Dundalk Highlands and places like that where you could get some lake effects because of the strong northwesterly winds setting up and seeing 8 to 10 centimeters possibly, and some whiteout conditions when we do have that kind of activity. But otherwise, it's just scattered flurries that we'll be looking at, and a few slick spots on the roadways. And really into tomorrow afternoon, we do have that potential for the commute, especially later in the day, but even so, that potential in the morning hours as well. I want to show you what the temperatures look like. They're not so bad because this is this transition period that I've been talking about. So winds from the west getting strong, so it will feel cooler than this, but lows of -2 to -4 for southwestern Ontario. Still windy, in fact, even windier. The gusts 50, 60 kilometers an hour tomorrow afternoon, scattered flurries, and the highs in the afternoon, -1, -2 degrees. And through the GTA, we're going to see the conditions through the overnight. Those temperatures keep plummeting down to 0 degrees for Hamilton, -2 in Markham, around the freezing mark for St. Catharines with some of those wet flurries, and then still the scattered flurries tomorrow and those strong, strong winds. So these will be the temperatures, again, staying nearly steady into the afternoon hours, but it'll feel more like -6 to -8 with the winds, and that's when they're not gusting. When they gust, it's going to feel cooler than that. And speaking of cooler than that, got to show you these numbers. Wednesday into Thursday, temperatures see here nearly steady from the overnight through the day, but then -12 Thursday night, Friday, and Friday, look at the high, -7, -11, the overnight low. And these feel like temperatures. These are the wind chills in the afternoon when we get to the warmth of the day. Not how it's going to feel in the morning. Some of these mornings, Mike, are going to feel like about -20. So big, big changes coming.
Never a good sign when you have to use air quotes to talk about the warmth.
Yes,
Thanks a lot.
that's right.
Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
The Raptors hosting the Atlanta Hawks tonight, and former Raptor Vince Carter there. He enters to a standing ovation. It's his 21st season. This could be his last game in Toronto. Even his mom's on hand for this one. He quickly buries a nice three-pointer right here in the first quarter. Let's jump to the fourth. Less than 30 seconds to go in regulation. Toronto down by 1. Kawhi Leonard with a stellar defense for the turnover. Season-high 6th steal of the game. Great ball movement by Toronto. And Serge Ibaka finishes with a powerful dunk. I may have uncharacteristically yelled at the newsroom at this point in excitement. Final ticks on the clock at this point. Atlanta looking for the win, but once again, it's Leonard with the strong D as Young can't score. Lowry passes to Anunoby for the jam. Raptors win 104 to 101. Well, Indigenous communities across Canada have a much higher rate of infant mortality than the general population. Indigenous children are also more likely to end up in care, but a new program designed by St. Michael's Hospital and a group of midwives is trying to change that. Philip Lee Shannock explains how it works.
A little tired.
A prenatal checkup at the 7th generation midwives in Regent Park, part of the Baby Bundles program.
That's the baby's heart rate there.
The Indigenous midwife is not just concerned about the mom-to-be's physical well-being and the health of her baby.
What about cultural teachings or smudging or different things that you would want to do? Yeah.
The last time she gave birth in a hospital, the 31-year-old wasn't allowed to do the traditional cleansing ceremony.
So I like that it is Indigenous women and it respects that I'm Indigenous. So they actually know, like, okay, maybe if you're stressed out or something, you need to cleanse, so then we'll smudge and stuff.
Along with traditional counseling and healing, the Baby Bundles program provides access to mental health and social service agencies, such as housing support. It's hoped that this kind of holistic support will mean fewer Indigenous children will end up in the children's aid system. According to Statistics Canada, the rate of Indigenous kids in care is 12 times higher than non-Indigenous kids. This midwife says the same mentality led to the 60s scoop, when Indigenous children were routinely removed from their families and sent to foster homes or adopted.
And that, creates a system where we're calling child protection services way more often, they're getting involved in people's lives way more often, and babies are getting apprehended way more often for reasons that are very different than they would be for non-Indigenous families.
While Seventh Generation Midwives is open to all, the center has an Indigenous staff and leadership, and it's designed to be a welcoming, spiritual, and respectful space. Now, this birthing center was purpose-built with Indigenous traditions in mind, just as the Baby Bundles program has a holistic approach to treating mother and child. It's had a huge effect on Indigenous kids in other countries where it's been tried.
The model that we are trying to implement here is based on a program in Australia, in Brisbane, where about 10 years ago they were facing a similar problem of a high number of infant apprehensions among Indigenous families.
Now, she says, by strengthening supports for families, no children are taken away. It's hoped that that can happen here too, and prove that early intervention can go a long way. Philip Shannock, CBC News, Toronto.
Before we go, a bit of happy news for you. A little dog that was stolen on Queen West has been reunited with his owners thanks to the help of strangers on social media. This is Prince. He was stolen after his owner tied him up outside of a store on Queen West. Now, after posting a plea for help on social media, tips from complete strangers started pouring in from there. And through messages and phone calls, Prince's owner was able to track the dog around the city, from Queen in Portland, where he was snatched, all the way up to York University. Eventually, though, after a 10-hour search, Prince was found and returned to his owner. quite a journey for the little guy. You can actually trace his steps and the lengths taken to track him down on our website. That's our newscast for tonight. I'll see you again tomorrow night at 11. Good night.